Amina had always been a quiet and thoughtful young woman. She lived in a small tribal village, surrounded by tall trees, open fields, and a river that shone like silver under the morning sun. The village was peaceful on the surface, but deep inside, its rules were strict, and its traditions were followed without question. People grew up knowing exactly what was expected of them, and anyone who stepped outside those expectations faced harsh judgment. Amina was born into this world, and although she respected her people, she carried a different heart, gentle, curious, and brave enough to ask why certain things were done the way they were. Her days were simple. She helped her mother collect water, prepared food with the other women, and listened carefully when the elders spoke. But she also wondered why some traditions seemed unfair, especially when they hurt someone without giving them a chance to explain. She never spoke these thoughts aloud, because she knew questioning was not welcome. Still, her quiet nature and thoughtful eyes often made others think she was hiding something. One morning began like any other. The sun had just started to rise, painting the sky in soft shades of gold and pink. Amina woke early and stepped outside her small hut to breathe the cool morning air. She felt calm, unaware that her life was about to take a painful turn. As she walked toward the river with a clay pot to fetch water, she noticed a group of villagers whispering and looking in her direction. Their faces were serious, and their eyes did not show the warmth she usually expected from familiar people. At first, she thought something unfortunate had happened in the village. But when she got closer, their whispers grew louder, and the way they stared at her made her heart beat faster. Amina approached carefully and asked if everything was all right, but no one answered her. Instead, they simply stepped aside, creating a path that led straight to the center of the village where the elders stood waiting. Amina felt a shiver run through her body. The elders rarely gathered like this unless something serious had happened. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the clay pot tightly to her chest. She took slow steps toward them, trying to understand what this strange silence meant. When she reached the center, Elder Karim, the oldest and most respected man in the village, stepped forward. His expression was stern, and his voice carried across the open space. "Amina," he said, "you have broken a rule of our tribe." She stared at him in shock. "I don't understand," she replied softly. "What rule?" Karim looked at the other elders before answering. "You were seen walking alone after sunset 2 nights ago. You know our tradition. Women must not walk in the dark without a companion. It is a sign of disrespect to our customs." Amina's heart dropped. She remembered that night. Her mother had been ill, and she had gone out to fetch herbs from a nearby spot. She had done it quietly so she wouldn't wake anyone, and she had returned as quickly as she could. She had not intended to break any rule. She only wanted to help. She tried to explain this, but the elders did not want to listen. The villagers around her murmured disapprovingly, and she felt their judgment like a heavy weight on her shoulders. Karim raised his hand to silence the noise and spoke again. "In our tribe, breaking the rule of night brings great shame. To remind you of your place and to protect the village from dishonor, you must face the ritual of marking." Amina felt her breath catch. The ritual of marking was rarely used, and when it was, it meant the person was being cast out or punished severely. Her vision blurred for a moment as tears filled her eyes. She tried to speak again, to explain the truth, but her voice was drowned out by the sound of people stepping closer, surrounding her. 2 women from the tribe approached her. They were not unkind, but their expressions were cold, as if they had no choice but to follow the tradition. One of them took the clay pot from her hands. The other gently held her arm, guiding her toward a small wooden platform in the center of the village. Amina felt numb. Her feet moved, but her mind could not accept what was happening. She felt alone, even though she was surrounded by people she had known her entire life. A large bowl filled with ash was placed beside the platform. The ash came from sacred wood burned during rituals, and its gray dust symbolized shame and separation. The sight of it made Amina's stomach twist. The women dipped their fingers into the ash and began to draw long, straight lines across her arms, her neck, and her face. The ash felt cold against her skin, and the lines separated her from the world she once belonged to. With each stroke, her heart felt heavier. She could hear whispers from the crowd, some sympathetic, others harsh, but what hurt her most was the silence of those she considered friends. Her clothing, simple and traditional, was then taken from her, leaving her nearly bare. Not completely uncovered, but stripped enough to show that the tribe no longer accepted her as one of their own. It was not done to harm her physically, but to mark her as someone no longer welcomed. The breeze felt sharp against her exposed skin, and she wrapped her arms around herself. Not just for warmth, but for the little comfort she could still hold on to. She looked around desperately, hoping someone would step forward, someone who would defend her, or at least question the elders' harsh decision. But no one did. Even those who had smiled at her just yesterday kept their eyes down, unwilling to challenge the rules. The elders spoke again, their voices echoing through the quiet space. Amina, until you can wash away the ash through your own journey and understanding, you are not part of this tribe. You must leave the village before the sun sets. Her breath shook as she listened. Leave the village? Leave her home? Where would she go? She had never traveled far before. She had no belongings, no food, and no protection. Her mother cried silently in the distance, unable to approach her daughter, held back by tradition. Amina's heart broke even more at the sight. But she stayed strong. She did not want her mother to feel guilt for something she could not control. As the elders stepped back, the crowd began to disperse. The whispers faded into the wind, leaving Amina standing alone in the middle of the village, marked with ash and stripped of the little security she once had. She felt exposed, not just physically, but emotionally. It felt as if her soul had been laid bare. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her shaking body. She knew she could not stay. The rules were clear, and even if she stayed until sunset, no one would offer her shelter or food. She had to leave before she was forced out. She walked back to her hut one last time. The door, once welcoming, now felt like a reminder of a life she no longer had. She picked up a small piece of cloth to drape around herself, nothing more. She looked around the empty space, remembering the laughter she once shared with her family and friends. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she stepped outside again. The sky was beginning to change color as the sun moved toward the horizon. Amina took one last look at her village, trying to hold on to its memory. Then, with a heart heavy but determined, she turned and began walking away from everything she had ever known. Her feet felt weak, her body cold, and her spirit wounded. The ash on her skin felt like a painful reminder of rejection. But deep inside, a small light of courage remained. She did not know where her path would lead, but she knew she had to keep moving. She may have been cast out, but she was still alive. And somewhere ahead, she hoped she would find a place where she was seen not as a mistake, but as a human being worthy of kindness. The next morning arrived quietly, almost too quietly for Lyra. When she opened her eyes, she found herself wrapped in the large shirt Aaron had placed over her the night before. The cloth was soft, oversized, and smelled faintly of river water and something warm, maybe wood smoke or the forest. She held it close for a moment, feeling a mix of comfort and fear. Comfort, because the shirt gave her dignity. Fear, because she still didn't know what her future looked like. Aaron had kept distance through the night, resting under a different tree and giving her space. This small act of respect made Lyra even more aware of how different he was from the people she had grown up among. Her tribe had always valued strength above kindness, rules above feelings. But here was a man from another land, someone who had no reason to help her, yet he had shown empathy when everyone else had shown rejection. Lyra slowly sat up. She touched the marks on her skin, dried ash, symbols her tribe had drawn before sending her away. They were not painful, but they reminded her of everything she had lost. Family, home, identity. She wondered if the river had carried away the worst of her fears, or if the new day would bring even more challenges. Aaron noticed her waking and approached with caution. "You're awake," he said gently. "How do you feel?" Lyra nodded instead of speaking. She still didn't trust her voice. She didn't want to sound weak or break down in front of him. Aaron didn't push her. He simply offered her some water in a wooden cup he carried. Lyra drank carefully. She realized she hadn't had anything since the morning before her exile. The water tasted fresh and cool, and she felt a small spark of strength returning. For a while, both of them remained quiet. Birds sang from the branches above, and the river made a soft, steady sound. The world looked peaceful, even though Lyra's heart still felt like it had a storm inside it. Finally, Aaron spoke. "I don't know what happened to you," he said, "and you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but you're safe with me for now." Lyra looked at him with wide eyes. Safe, she had never expected to hear that word again. The tribe had declared her unwanted, unworthy, someone who needed to be forgotten. Yet here was a stranger offering her the one thing she thought she had lost forever. She wanted to ask him why. Why he had helped her. Why he cared. Why he didn't walk away like everyone else. But she still couldn't find the courage to speak. Aaron didn't seem bothered. He began packing his small belongings, some tools, a folded blanket, and a pouch filled with dried berries. His movements were calm and unhurried. Lyra watched him silently, wondering what he planned to do next. After a moment, Aaron looked at her again. "I'm heading toward the next village," he explained. "It's a long walk, but they have healers there. People who understand markings and traditions, even from distant tribes. If you come with me, maybe they can help you." Lyra's heart began beating faster. A village meant people. People meant questions. Questions could lead to judgment. She wasn't sure she could face that. Aaron seemed to notice the fear in her expression. "You can stay here if you prefer," he said kindly. "I won't force you. But staying alone near the river isn't safe either. There are animals, and nights can get cold." Lyra hesitated. She didn't fully trust him yet. But she trusted the forest even less. She remembered how her tribe had led her through the woods the previous day. How the shadows felt like they were closing in on her as she walked away from everything she knew. Going alone wasn't an option. Slowly, she stood up. The shirt hung loosely around her, but it covered her well enough. She nodded once. Aaron smiled slightly, not a big smile, not a proud one, just a small expression of relief. "All right," he said softly. "We'll walk slowly." They started moving through the forest path. The trees stood tall on both sides, their branches filtering the sunlight. Lyra walked a few steps behind Aaron at first, unsure if she could match his pace or if she even wanted to. But Aaron kept checking back to make sure she wasn't struggling. Whenever she slowed down, he slowed down too. Whenever she paused, he paused. It was the first time in her life someone had moved at her pace, instead of expecting her to keep up. As they walked, Lyra became more aware of how different this forest looked compared to her tribe's land. Her tribe lived in a dry valley, with open plains, while this area was rich, with shades of green. Leaves whispered with every breeze. Small animals rushed through bushes. The air smelled different, more alive, as if the forest itself was breathing. Aaron occasionally pointed out safe paths or warned her about slippery stones, but he didn't speak much otherwise. He allowed the silence to exist, giving Lyra time to think. She remembered the night before. The fire. The circle of faces around her. The chief speaking the final words. Her heart had raced so fast she could barely breathe. Then came the ash. The mark of separation. She remembered standing in the cold, nearly bare, feeling the weight of shame press down on her. Tears threatened her eyes even now. She blinked them away quickly. Aaron noticed her wiping her cheek. "If you ever want to tell me what happened," he said gently, "I'll listen, but only when you're ready." Lyra's breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her like that. In her tribe, words were commands, not invitations. But Aaron's tone held no pressure, only patience. They walked until the sun was high. The light filtered through leaves in golden patterns, warming the forest floor. Aaron suggested they rest near a fallen log. Lyra sat carefully, pulling the shirt around her legs to hide herself better. She still felt the discomfort of being exposed, even though Aaron had never looked at her with anything but respect. After a few minutes, Aaron offered her some of the dried berries from his pouch. Lyra tasted one cautiously. It was sweet, much sweeter than anything she had eaten in weeks. She felt energy rising in her body. Aaron smiled again, seeing her expression. Good, right? They grow near the hills. You'll see them on the way. Lyra nodded, this time with a small smile of her own. It was the first friendly gesture she had given anyone in a long time. The journey continued. With every hour that passed, Lyra felt a little less afraid. She noticed small things: how Aaron walked carefully so branches wouldn't snap loudly, how he didn't make sudden movements, how he always kept a respectful distance. He treated her as if she mattered, as if she still belonged somewhere. By late afternoon, the forest thinned, revealing a path that led toward distant hills. Aaron stopped and turned to her. The village is on the other side, he explained. We won't reach it today, but we can camp near the stream ahead. Lyra nodded again. She didn't speak, but she didn't feel the same heaviness she had felt in the morning. Something inside her was shifting slowly. They reached the small stream by sunset. Aaron set up a simple place to rest, nothing fancy, just a clean area where they could sit and keep warm. He gathered wood while Lyra sat quietly, watching the water flow. The stream's soft sound felt calming, almost like a lullaby she didn't know she needed. When the fire was finally lit, Aaron gave her another blanket to wrap around herself for warmth. She accepted it gratefully. The flames painted gentle orange light on their faces, making everything feel softer, safer. For the first time since her exile, Lyra didn't feel completely broken. She looked at Aaron. He was staring into the fire, thoughtful and calm. He didn't ask questions. He didn't judge her. He just stayed nearby, offering presence instead of pressure. As the night deepened, Lyra finally found her voice quiet, shaky, but real. My name is Lyra, she whispered. Aaron looked up, surprised but warm. It's nice to meet you, Lyra. She nodded, feeling her heart loosen just a little. For the first time in many days, she didn't fall asleep feeling alone. She felt the beginning of something new, something fragile but hopeful, something she had never known before. A chance, a beginning. Rahim had been walking since early morning. The road was long, stretching between the hills and the open fields on both sides. He carried a small bag over his shoulder and a calm, steady look in his eyes. He was returning from a nearby village where he had helped a friend repair a broken water wheel. Rahim enjoyed these travels. They allowed him to see new places, meet new people, and understand the world beyond his own home. He walked with a relaxed pace, humming softly to himself as he followed the dusty path. The sun was warm but gentle that day, and a quiet breeze moved through the tall grass, making it look like waves on a green sea. Rahim loved such peaceful days, and he did not expect anything unusual to happen. But life has a way of surprising people, especially when they least expect it. As he walked, he noticed something far ahead on the path, a small, faint figure moving unsteadily. At first, he thought it might be a traveler like him, but the more he observed the distant shape, the more he felt something was wrong. The figure was slow, almost dragging its steps. It swayed from side to side, as if it could fall any moment. Rahim's brows tightened with concern. He quickened his pace, keeping his eyes fixed on the figure. When he finally came close enough, he realized it was a young woman. Her body was covered in ash, her clothes were barely there, and her shoulders were shaking as if she was cold or exhausted, or both. She had long, dark hair that looked tangled from wind and struggle. Her arms were wrapped around herself, trying to hide her trembling. Rahim stopped a few steps away, giving her space. He did not want to scare her. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. Amina looked up, surprised to hear a voice. She had been walking, without seeing ahead clearly. Her vision was blurry from tears, pain, and days of weakness. She blinked, trying to make sense of the man standing in front of her. He was dressed simply, with a calm and kind expression that she had not seen on anyone's face for days. But her fear did not disappear immediately. After everything she had gone through, Trusting a stranger felt impossible. She tried to take a step back, but her legs trembled, and she lost her balance. Before she could fall, Rahim moved quickly and held her gently by the arm, steadying her. "It's all right," he said softly. "I'm not here to harm you. You're safe." Amina tried to speak, but her voice was weak, barely a whisper. "Please, I don't want trouble." "There is no trouble," Rahim assured her. "You look tired. Let me help you." For a moment, Amina hesitated. She wasn't sure if she should accept help, but her body had reached its limit. She felt dizzy, her knees shaking like thin branches in strong wind. Before she could think further, everything around her began to spin, her vision faded, and she collapsed. Rahim reacted instantly. He caught her before she hit the ground and gently lowered her to the side of the path where the grass was soft. Her breathing was shallow, and her skin felt cold despite the warm weather. He quickly opened his bag and took out a small water flask. He lifted her head carefully and helped her sip a little water. At first, the water touched her lips, and she barely reacted. But after a moment, she swallowed, and her body relaxed just slightly. Rahim didn't rush her. He let her take her time. Once she had taken a few sips, he looked around. The sun was still high, but the shade of a large tree nearby offered a cooler, safer place for her to rest. He gently picked her up in his arms. She was light, and he carried her with care. As if she were something fragile, he laid her down under the tree, making sure she was comfortable. Then he took off his own shirt, a simple cotton shirt but big and clean, and placed it over her shoulders to give her warmth and dignity. Amina, half conscious, felt the softness of the cloth against her skin and the gentleness in the way it was placed. No one from her village had treated her with such kindness when she needed it the most. Yet this stranger was doing it without hesitation. After a few minutes, Amina slowly opened her eyes. She saw the shirt covering her. She recognized it wasn't hers. She turned her head slightly and saw Rahim sitting a short distance away, giving her space but watching her with concern. "You fainted," he said quietly. "Don't try to sit up yet. Rest for a while." Amina swallowed hard. Her throat was dry, but she managed to speak. Why are you helping me?" Rahim looked surprised by the question. "Why wouldn't I?" he asked gently. "You needed help." Amina lowered her eyes. "Nobody helps someone like me anymore." Rahim didn't push her for answers. Instead, he waited. After a few moments of silence, he offered her the flask again. "Drink more. You need it." She reached for it with trembling hands, and he guided it to her so she wouldn't spill. The cool water refreshed her, and little by little, her strength began to return. She pulled the shirt tighter around her body, grateful for the comfort it offered. After a long pause, Rahim asked, "Do you want to tell me what happened?" Amina remained quiet, unsure if she should trust him, but the kindness in his eyes made her feel safe. Maybe for the first time since she left her village, she took a deep breath and spoke slowly, carefully choosing her words. "My tribe cast me out," she said softly. "They marked me with ash and told me to leave." Rahim listened without interrupting. His expression remained calm, but he felt sadness for her. "Why did they do that?" he asked gently. Amina looked down at her hands. "They believed I broke a rule. I tried to explain, but no one listened. They didn't even want to hear the truth." Her voice broke slightly, but she continued. "I walked for days. I had nothing. No one looked at me with kindness. I thought I would never find someone who cared whether I lived or not." Rahim felt his chest tighten. "You are not alone," he said softly. "And you don't deserve to be treated that way." His words touched her. She had heard so many harsh voices that she had forgotten what kindness sounded like. She looked at him fully for the first time. His eyes were steady, warm, and sincere. She felt a strange comfort, like a small flame lighting a dark room. Rahim took some food from his bag, a piece of bread and dried fruit, and placed it beside her. "Eat when you're ready. It will help." Amina reached for the bread slowly. Her hands shook from hunger and weakness, but she managed to take a small bite. The taste felt heavenly after days of near starvation. She ate slowly, trying not to rush, though her body begged for more. Rahim leaned back against the tree, giving her time. "I'm Rahim," he said gently. "What's your name?" "Amina," she replied. "Amina," he repeated softly, as if trying to carry her name with care. "You're safe with me." They sat under the shade for a long while. Amina ate until her stomach felt warm again. Rahim told her small stories to keep her mind calm about villages he had visited, people he had met, and things he had learned on his travels. She listened quietly. His voice was steady and pleasant, and it made her feel lighter. At one point, she asked him, "Why did you stop for me? Most people would walk past." Rahim smiled gently. "Because someone once helped me when I had no one. Kindness doesn't need a reason. It only needs a heart." Amina felt her eyes sting with new tears, not from pain, but from relief. She wiped them quickly, not wanting to look weak. But Rahim noticed and spoke softly. "It's all right to cry," he said. "It means you're healing." She didn't answer, but his words stayed in her heart. As the afternoon turned into evening, Amina felt strong enough to sit up fully. Rahim helped her carefully, making sure she didn't fall again. She looked around at the quiet landscape, the gentle wind moving through the trees. For the first time in days, she felt safe, even if just for that moment. Rahim looked at her thoughtfully. "You don't have to walk alone anymore," he said. "If you want, I can help you reach a safer place. A town not too far from here. People there are kind." Amina hesitated. She didn't know if she should trust him completely. But something inside her whispered that this man was genuine, and she no longer had the strength to face the world alone. "Thank you," she said softly. I would be grateful for your help." Rahim nodded, his expression gentle. "Then rest tonight. Tomorrow, we begin a new journey." Amina pulled his shirt tighter around her shoulders and leaned back against the tree, feeling the quiet safety of that moment. She still felt the weight of her past. But now there was something else too: hope. A quiet hope, small but real. The man who didn't look away had become the first light in her darkness, and as she closed her eyes, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. The sense that maybe, just maybe, she was not truly alone anymore. The night passed quietly under the tall tree where Amina and Rahim rested. The air was cool, and the stars shone like small lanterns across the sky. Amina slept deeply, for the first time in many days. Her body was still weak, but the safety she felt with Rahim allowed her mind to finally relax. When she woke in the early morning, the sun was just rising, spreading soft light over the land. The sky glowed in shades of orange and pink, painting a peaceful scene that made her feel calm. Rahim was already awake, sitting near the tree with his bag beside him. He looked up when Amina opened her eyes, and a gentle smile touched his face. "Good morning," he said kindly. "How are you feeling?" Amina stretched her fingers slowly. "Better," she said softly. "Still tired, but better." "That's good," Rahim replied. "You slept well. You needed it." Amina nodded. She pulled his shirt closer around her shoulders. She still couldn't believe a stranger had helped her so selflessly. It felt strange, but comforting. Rahim didn't treat her differently because of the ash on her skin or the rough condition she was in. He looked at her as if she was just another human being deserving of care. Rahim handed her a small piece of bread and fruit from his bag. "Eat before we start walking. The town is a few hours away." Amina took the food with grateful eyes. "Thank you for everything." "You don't need to thank me for being human," Rahim said gently. His words warmed her heart. After eating slowly and drinking a little water, Amina tried to stand. Her legs wobbled at first, but Rahim held her arm lightly until she gained balance. Together, they began walking down the path. The morning breeze brushed against their faces, and the soft earth under their feet made the journey feel easier. For the first few minutes, they walked quietly. Amina watched the scenery around them: the open fields, the tall trees, the bright sky. It felt good to breathe fresh air and walk beside someone she trusted. After everything she had gone through, the simple act of walking without fear felt like a blessing. Rahim noticed her looking around. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he asked. Amina nodded. "Yes. I never looked at it like this before." "Sometimes," Rahim said thoughtfully, "we see the world differently when we have suffered. Pain changes our eyes, but it also makes us appreciate small things more." Amina listened to his words quietly. She had spent her whole life in her tribe's village, where every day felt the same. But now, the world seemed bigger, more open, and less frightening because Rahim was walking with her. As they continued, Rahim told her small stories from his travels about a village by the sea where the sand sparkled like tiny crystals, about a mountain path where the wind sang between the rocks, about kind people he had met on lonely roads. Amina listened with interest. His gentle voice and simple stories made her feel like she, too, could start a new life somewhere far from her past. After a while, Amina asked quietly, "Do you think I can belong somewhere again?" After everything that happened, Rahim slowed his steps and looked at her with calm honesty. "A place does not give you worth, Amina. You carry your worth inside you. Anyone who cannot see it loses something. Not you." Amina felt her eyes sting. She looked away for a moment, trying not to cry. "No one ever told me that before." Rahim smiled gently. "Then I'm glad I'm the first." The road slowly curved toward a small hill. When they reached the top, Rahim stopped and pointed ahead. "Look," he said. Below them, in the distance, was a small town. Smoke rose from chimneys, children played near a well, and people walked through the streets carrying baskets. It looked warm, lively, and welcoming. "That is where we're going," Rahim said. "The people there are kind. You can rest, find help, and decide what you want to do next." Amina stared at the town, feeling a mixture of nervousness and hope. "Will they accept me?" she asked. Rahim nodded. "People there do not judge quickly, and you will not be alone. I will stay until you are safe." His promise filled her with courage. They began walking downhill toward the town. As they got closer, Amina felt her heart beating faster, not with fear, but with anticipation. For the first time since she was cast out of her tribe, she felt like the world might still have a place for her. When they reached the edge of the town, a few people looked at them curiously. Amina instinctively lowered her head, afraid of their judgment. But Rahim placed a gentle hand on her arm and whispered, "Lift your head. You have done nothing wrong." She took a deep breath and raised her eyes. To her surprise, the people didn't look at her with rejection or suspicion. Some of them smiled, and one woman carrying vegetables paused to ask Rahim if they needed help. He explained that Amina had been traveling and needed rest. The woman nodded kindly. "There is a small shelter near the well," she said. "She can stay there. Many travelers use it." Amina felt relief wash over her. They walked to the shelter, which was a simple but clean building with a few beds and water jars. Rahim helped her sit down on one of the beds. Amina touched the soft blanket gently. It felt warm, safe, and comforting. "You can stay here," Rahim said softly. "I will bring you food and fresh clothing." Amina looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You've done so much for me already. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to," he replied with a gentle smile. "Helping you is not a burden." Amina watched him leave the shelter. She felt a strange emptiness the moment he stepped outside, but also a deep appreciation. She knew she would never forget his kindness. After a few minutes, he returned with clothes clean, simple, and comfortable. He handed them to her through the door so she could change privately. When she stepped out wearing the new clothes, Rahim's eyes softened. "You look stronger already." Amina touched the fabric gently. "These belong to the life I want to build," she said quietly. They walked outside and sat on a bench near the well. People passed by with warm, curious smiles. Amina felt lighter. She no longer felt like someone rejected or lost. She felt like a person starting a new path. Rahim looked at her thoughtfully. Amina, now that you are safe, I want you to choose what you want. I can stay longer and help you settle, or I can leave today. It is your decision. Your life should follow your choices now. Amina looked down at her hands. For so long, her life had been decided by others, elders, rules, traditions. This was the first time someone gave her control over her future. She took a deep breath. I want to stay here, she said softly. I want to try building a life where I am accepted. Rahim nodded. That is a good choice. This town can be a new beginning for you. Amina hesitated before asking. And you? Where will you go? Rahim smiled gently. I have more places to see. More people to help. But I will stay until you feel steady. Amina's heart tightened a little, but she understood. Rahim was not a man who belonged to one place. He was a traveler with a warm heart that spread kindness wherever he went. Over the next few days, Rahim helped Amina settle into the town. She met kind women who taught her simple work so she could earn coins. She helped in the kitchen of a small shop, washing vegetables, preparing dough, and serving food. The work was simple, but every day she felt stronger, more confident, and more alive. Rahim visited her often, checking on her, talking to her, and making sure she felt supported. One evening, after she finished her work, she walked outside and saw Rahim standing under a tree near the road. His bag was packed. She knew what that meant. You're leaving, she said quietly. He nodded gently. It's time. Amina felt her throat tighten. I don't know how to say goodbye. Rahim stepped closer. You don't need to. This is not the end. Your journey continues from here. And I want you to remember something. She looked up, her eyes warm with emotion. You were never alone, Rahim said softly. You only needed someone who could see your worth. Now that you see it too, you are stronger than your past. Amina swallowed her tears and whispered, Thank you for giving me hope. Rahim smiled. Hope was already inside you. I only helped you find it. He gave her one last warm look, then turned and began walking down the road. Amina watched until he disappeared in the distance. She stood there for a long moment, holding on to the words he left behind. Then she turned back toward the town, her new home, with a heart full of strength. The ashes of her past were gone. What remained was a woman reborn, ready to face her future with courage and self-respect.